Um, Thanks for the introduction. I'm just going to give a little bit of background about Segment and about myself. Segment started about 3.5 years ago. It was an open source project released by some developers who are MIT dropouts. And the idea was this was a really easy way for companies to just be able to pick the tools they wanted to use instead of going through long integration processes. There was no thought that there was a business behind it, but it really took off. So 3.5 years later, we have over 8,000 customers, many customers who are in this room today. Began by selling to startups, but now have companies like Crate & Barrel, IBM, Fox, Wall Street Journal, The Gap, who we handle all of their data and also power all of the analytics, email, push notification, all the different tools they use, as well as a lot of the sort of cutting edge startups that you guys might look to for, as companies that are doing really interesting things with data. So Munchery, Instacart, DraftKings, OpenTable here in New York, Oscar Insurance, Casper Mattress, Warby Parker, Bonobos. And so Segment has really grown very, very quickly because of the way in which we solve these data issues. I joined Segment as the first employee and have had a number of different roles, ran sales, ran post-sales customer support, and just moved out to New York to open up an East Coast office. So the idea with Segment, or the idea of this today, was that I was going to talk about how organizations differentiate themselves through analytics and marketing and data. The reality is, as I started to think, how can I... Oh, no worries. As I started to think, wow, how can I abstract a message that's going to be applicable to everyone here? I mean, is there one thing that I can tell you from having worked with thousands of companies at different levels of sort of sophistication? Is there one thing that's going to ring true? And it really didn't seem like there was. You have companies of different sizes and different verticals with different tools that they're exposed to, different political cultures, different levels of sophistication with their engineering teams. And so I thought what I would do instead is talk about what is the one biggest mistake that I seem to see everybody making. So I'll play the role of Cassandra today, and hopefully, as I talk about this stuff, and I think it's on people's minds, then you can start to see within your own organization if you're headed down this path. And the biggest mistake that I see today that I think is going to cause a collective hangover in this room in about 2 years is that there are companies who are rushing to make the single view of the customer, this idea of an integrated understanding of who your customers are, in a way that can never, ever, ever work. That the underlying architecture of how these things are being built is just an impossibility. And so I'll sort of walk through that. Now, to anybody who's not sort of ensconced in this already, the idea of the single view of the customer is that every one of the companies that we all use has a number of different tools, and each of these tools has some critical component, some facet of information about the relationship that you have with your customers. So your email tools have information about what emails did they open and click on. Your advertising tools have data about what was the cost to acquire these customers, what creative did they respond to. Your analytics tools have information about what did they do inside of the mobile app and the website. But tying it all together offers untold possibilities for the sort of modern millennial selling and just sort of the future of integrated marketing product development. So, from the last panel, the idea of recommendation engines, understanding intent. What is the relationship between our customer support team and NPS score? And can we, tie what people did inside of the app to what they think of the company? Before I talk about the difficulty of harnessing all this data together, which I guess I'm thinking of as the problems of tomorrow, let's think really quickly about the problems of today, problems that I imagine are shared by all the companies that you work at. And the sort of primary one, at least in relation to this, is that integrating tools is still insanely costly. I just imagine that everyone who's in this room gets pitched X number of interesting sounding MarTech startups every single year, and you hear about incredibly cool tools all the time. And if we set that number over here, and over here we set the actual number of tools that you guys try out in your company, where you rip out the incumbent, I imagine there's like this incredible delta. And it's not because the new tools aren't good, it's because there is so much cost of actually being able to try a new tool out. And that's because engineering has to get involved, there's an insane amount of work that they have to do. There's data loss if you switch from one vendor to another. Because this is such a big issue, then there's political impacts, and you have to get multiple stakeholders. If you're going to try one new email tool, you may as well survey all of the new email tools. There's just a lot of problems associated with the model today. And what's crazy, and the reason why Segment even exists, is we stumbled into something. We don't do anything involving segmentation. We were building a different tool. It involved customer segments. It was failing miserably. We stumbled into something else. And it's that every single tool, no matter what they do, email, analytics, heat mapping, customer support, CRM, are actually ingesting the exact same information. It's who is the user and what are they doing. And it's incumbent upon your developers to tell each one of those tools the same thing in a different way. A user has purchased something to your email tool. Un usor compró algo to your heat mapping tool. Mishuhu kone mashuhu to your CRM tool. You're saying the same thing over and over. And that is the cost of integrations, is that you're learning how to be fluent in all these different languages. Well, what Segment does is you just tell us and we're a translator. So I don't want to make this about Segment. If anybody's interested in what Segment does, we have a booth outside and you can come. But the idea is once people integrate Segment, they can integrate Adobe in under 30 seconds. They can integrate eMarsis or Marketo or Salesforce in under 30 seconds. They just say, we want to use Salesforce, and we transform that data into the language spoken by that tool. But however you decide to do it, let's say these are all of the places where your data is generated. So think at your own company, where is the data living that you actually care about? You have data in your analytics tools about your web and mobile behavior. You have data in your servers. You have data in your payment processing tools. You have data in your email tools, in your CRM. And where is it that the data would be valuable if it landed? Right? Where would you like to tie these things together to do the kinds of things that were just described in the last panel, of being able to anticipate intent? So just a few trivial examples that sort of illustrate the power. What if you could get all the data from your payment processor into your customer support tool, so that you can just programmatically say, hey, for every user who spent more than $1,000 with us, when they reach out, I want them to go to our most experienced customer support people. Or what about every user who has spent more than $50 in 3 consecutive months who hasn't been back in the last 2 months? I want that to pop up in our customer support tool so that they know that they're authorized to give them a little something, because we want to revive. There's a lot of things you can do with this, and that is a trivial pipe. What if you want to take your advertising data and your cart data and load it into your email tool? So you can say, I want to find all of the users who responded to these campaigns with this design style and who put these items into the shopping cart. And this Christmas, I want to send them programmatic emails that have similar design styles, that have similar types of products that we want to advertise to them. There's a million of these things. We could talk about what is the impact of NPS score, right? And tying NPS data. So I imagine, and just sort of nod your head if this sounds right, I see some already, how many of the companies you guys are working at, or at all of your companies, are you trying to think about how you can merge all of this data together? So there's a million possible use cases, but then what you end up with is something that looks like this. And every one of these black lines is an immense amount of engineering work, both to build and to maintain, because you are taking the same data, or who are users and what are they doing, and you're learning a new language each time you pipe it over. And if you think about how difficult your lives are today to get one new email tool, even if you hate the email tool you use, if you imagine how difficult it is to get one new tool instrumented at your company, imagine how much harder it's going to be when each new tool is actually integrated, or each tool you have is integrated to every other tool that you have. And so it is very clear to me today that the way in which companies are going about merging their data is they're just tying ropes around themselves, where there will be some short-term gains, but down the road they will never be able to change their tools ever again. And this type of setup is going to sink and collapse under its own weight. This cannot be the way that it works, and yet this is the thing that we see the largest companies trying to build, because it seems so intuitive. So hold that in the back of your mind as you start to hear these kinds of conversations at your companies. Now, this doesn't have to be the way that it works. So to give you a sense of another option, the way that this happens at Segment is, again, we're just a common hub. So we programmatically pull all of a company's data out of their advertising tool, out of Zendesk, out of Salesforce, out of Adobe, out of all these tools, and then we just load it into all of the other tools, because we're a hub for that. And so I think companies are going to have to adopt some kind of model, and this isn't specific to Segment, but this is the only model that can work, and we see very few companies that have thought far enough ahead to realize this. So to give you a little bit of historical context, to maybe make this a little bit more intuitive, every single distributed system that exists in our world today, that has existed since the Roman aqueduct system, follows this model. So if you think about our electrical grid, if you think about our road network, if you think about the International Postal Service, or if you think about the phone grid, they all evolve along this one line of complexity, which is to say, if I get on my cell phone right now and I call my dad who's in Italy, I'm going to say, hey, Dad, and my voice is going to be in a digital mobile cellular signal. and it's going to go hit a tower somewhere, and then it's going to be, a digital signal over copper. It's going to go through a protocol switch under the Atlantic. It's going to hit this antiquated Italian, network, and it's going to be, analog on copper. And when my dad picks up the phone, the only thing he's going to hear is, "Hey, Dad," because the system itself handles all the complexity. If the world of phones worked the way that the world of data does at most of our companies, I would have to have 200 different kinds of phone in this building, and at my house, and at my office, and so would all of you, and the world would be covered in wires, which is exactly what everybody is embarking on building right now, right? So the idea is, in a phone network, all you need to do to enter into the phone network is plug a jack into the wall. All you need to do to enter into the road network, you don't build roads to everywhere you want to go. You just build up the road on the street, and then all the complexity is handled in transit. But the way in which people are approaching data, which is the exact same problem, where data needs to pop up in different places in different formats, is to actually take, upon themselves all of that building. So, I just want to leave you with this. I don't want to be sort of like the Debbie Downer. I think there's like a real opportunity that everybody has today to figure out a better way to do this, to sort of use a common hub network. But I've already today heard a lot of people thinking about all of the possibilities of data being merged, and they're starting to say, well, we're loading data from here into there. And I just want people to think a little bit about what happens 2 years from now if that's not the tool that you want to use. Any questions? If anyone else wants to chat, then again, we're going to be right outside, or feel free to send me an email.